Hello! A lot of people have asked me lately about how to draw animals, how to draw your cat, your dog, your hamster, whatever. A lot of people get confused when they start thinking about all the different things they have to do with drawing fur, the colour, the depth, the individual hairs, how much detail to put in. So today I'm going to give you a few little different techniques that you can look at and pick and choose and decide what works best for you. This first painting will be in acrylics, using a stylised painting technique and what might seem to be some unusual colours. I start with an underpainting. This has a number of different purposes. Firstly, it gives me the basic layout of the image and the tonal values. It's also a start that gets rid of the white paper fear and gets your brain moving. You can be quite loose at this point. You won't really see much of this layer when the painting's finished. I'm going to work in layers in this painting, building up the detail as I go. Although on first glance this llama is black, if you look closely at the source material, you begin to see other colours in there. There's a lot of blue and green in this picture. My underpainting, therefore, is blue and green because that will affect the colours I paint the details with. In the second layer I stay with the bright colours, but specifically mark in the highlights and lowlights. I've used a Prussian blue and a very pale blue to do this. Again, this helps with my mapping out. As I get closer to completing the painting, the detail gets tighter and tighter. Notice as well that although the llama is black, I won't be using any straight out of the tube black at all in this image. I mix a Prussian blue and a Van Dyke brown to get the very dark, rich colour. Those of you who have been part of the tribe for a while now will know that using actual flat black out of the tube is a bit of a no-no for me. I've built the painting up using short strokes of the paintbrush to show the short hair, and I'll talk about this in detail with one of the paintings in today's film, but the main reason I chose this image was because of his curly hair. And his derpy face, of course, I couldn't resist that. The underpainting I've done gives me my basic layout of colours and tones. Then I put the darker tones in using my blue and brown mix. It's important to follow the flow of the hair by moving your paintbrush in the same directions as the hair. So here I'm curling my brush to follow what I see. Then I add some midtones and then the lighter tones. This llama's hair is quite wild and wiry, so I finished by turning my brush around and using the wooden end to scratch into the wet paint in order to create more movement and wildness. I also used a palette knife to create some fine lines. It can often be a good idea to match your style of painting to the type of thing you're painting. I wanted to make this image bright, with the blue underpainting showing through, and do some crazy mark making to show his silly and absent-minded character. I will quite often use a grid when I draw. It speeds up the process of mapping out the basics of your image so that you can get going. Here I've already drawn in the eyes and nose and got rid of some of the grid lines because I want to concentrate on the fur today. Always erase grid lines as you go when doing a pencil drawing, because it's difficult to erase them afterwards and even more difficult to disguise them by covering them with pencil marks. When you're drawing fur with pencil, less is often more. Sometimes a few simple marks in the right place can say enough. Work with a harder pencil at first in order to make lighter marks, and then build your tones up with softer pencils. In this drawing I started shading with a 2B, moving to a 4B and then creating lowlights with a 6B. As I've said in a previous video, Take note of where the heel of your hand sits on the drawing. I'm left-handed, so I often draw from right to left, but sometimes this isn't possible. When you're forced to put your hand onto part of your drawing, use a piece of scrap paper to stop the sweat on your hand from smudging your work. When you're done, put fine details in like whiskers at the very end. If you want a quick but effective drawing style, try biro. It can be quite scrappy and scribbly, or you can work with detail, but it can take some confidence. Remember in primary school when you were told to start writing in pen instead of pencil and you freaked out a bit because you knew you couldn't erase it and had to be perfect? You'll get the same feeling with this. But as I always say, don't get precious and just jump in with both feet. Use as many different biro colours as you like. But the fun bit is getting a cheap can of hairspray and covering your drawing with it to blend the ink and create shadows. You can work back into the drawing again with the biro if you lose the details and it gets a bit muddy. And make sure you're well ventilated. I don't want anyone passing out on me, please. I'm starting this painting in exactly the same way as I did the llama, with an underpainting that has the colours turned up to 11. Work quite loosely again, and always think about the direction of your brush strokes. Always follow the direction of the fur of the animal you're painting. But don't make uniform marks, as fur is a natural thing and it never sits perfectly, as we all know when we look in the mirror first thing in the morning. So turn your paper around as you go and make sure the movements of your hand feel natural rather than awkward. Feather in the edges of what you're doing too, in order that you don't get any strange sharp-edged clumps of colour. Work in layers again, starting loosely and then drill down to the detail with each additional layer. Tighten your image as you go, and it often helps to limit your palette. This painting mainly uses different mixes of the same orange, brown and white. This way, whatever I do, it stays consistent throughout the process. When you work paint onto wet paint like this, often mixing colour on the page, it's called alla prima. Keep stepping back from your work in order to look at it as a whole and figure out what you need to work on and change. You can work on it as a whole like I do, or concentrate on one area at a time. It's up to you. I'm not here to tell you what you must do. I am, as always, here to show you how I do things so that you can take these techniques and add them to your own skills list. I always think of painting fur in layers, like you're working from the skin as a starting point and working your way out in layers until you reach those fine whiskery hairs on the top. So remember, start with your colour and tone map, work in your layers, tightening the detail with each layer. Always work your brush in the direction the hair is growing and keep stepping back to check what you've done. Working with fur doesn't have to be difficult. When you have a method and a formula, you can break it down into pieces, and as long as you have some patience, you can do it. It just takes some concentration and some commitment. But I believe in you. So go and get a good shot of the cat, the dog, or even the hamster and give it a try. As always, use the comments section below to ask me questions about any of this, or join our Facebook group, Arty Mouse Art Tutorials, to show your work and get a personal tutorial with me. Sign up at the link below to get extra tips each week. Take a look at the Arty Mouse 76 Instagram account to get film previews, and of course, give me a little vote of confidence by subscribing to this channel so that I know you're out there. See you soon!